Hey everybody, today I will be reading more of your ghost story submissions. This first story comes from Byrea, located in South Carolina. From the time I was 4 until the time I was about 11 years old, I lived in this old house on the outskirts of my town. I lived there with my mother, her boyfriend, and occasionally my foster sister, Cassidy. When we first moved there, the landlord did not tell us of any paranormal activity. Just that it was a very old house built in around the 1800s. So for the first couple of months, nothing really happened. Then came the first experience. I was laying in my bed, fast asleep, when I suddenly was awoken by a loud noise. A few seconds after I had woken up, I heard a whispering voice. Then a full-bodied male figure appeared. He seemed to be an older man, turned and talking to someone, except there was no one else there. After about 5 minutes, the man disappeared and the voices stopped. After that, I started having very vivid nightmares about strange creatures and my parents being brutally murdered, which I still vividly remember. These started when I was 4 and ended when I left the house. My mother and I would hear whispering voices, footsteps, and doors opening on their own. In complete silence, we could often hear breathing other than our own. My mom's boyfriend rarely witnessed anything, considering he was always away on business trips, but then came something none of us could ignore. When I was about 10, we were watching TV, late at night, in the living room. When the TV flickered off, we heard whispering and then screaming that got louder and louder until silence. A year later, we moved out, never looking back. 3 years later, I'm still terrified of that house. This next story comes from Cassidy, located in Pavo, Georgia. Several years ago, there was a car wreck that happened in front of my mom's office, which is an old schoolhouse that is now a board of education. I can't remember the details of the wreck, but I do know that it was a head-on collision. In one car, the driver, who was an adult male, had minor injuries and didn't need to be taken to in an ambulance. However, in the other car, a young boy who was around the age of 10 suffered a fatal head injury and was being loaded into the ambulance. My mom and her coworker huddled around the office window as they watched the scene take place, and my mom noticed a man being taken to the same ambulance as the boy. And she didn't think anything of it because she assumed the man from the opposite car needed to be looked after. However, he was on the opposite side of the parking lot. Since it wasn't him, her next thought was that the man must be the boy's father and he was driving when the accident happened. After everything was cleaned up and the ambulance left, everyone went back to work. The next day, the local newspaper posted an article about the wreck and listed the survivors, which included everyone expected, except it listed the boy's mother and not his father, who wasn't even in the car or present when it happened. My mom asked my aunt, who worked at the hospital, about the man in the ambulance, and she searched for the registration form, which stated that only the boy was registered and no one else was in the ambulance. This next story comes from Carlos, located in Mexico. One time, a friend and some uncles and I went to a town called Atenco. In there, we went to an abandoned hacienda, which are these places where people have crops and animals, and they are also big extensions of land that have a huge house at this entrance. The hacienda we were visiting had been constructed in 1516, I believe, and was actually the first in Mexico. Anyways, my friend and I were exploring the old house when we suddenly heard some sounds behind us. As we turned around, we came across a strange lady. She looked at us and said the following words in Spanish: "No me agrada la persona atrás de ustedes," and suck at reading Spanish, which can translate as, "I don't like the person behind of you two." We slowly turned around and saw this guy in a rocking chair. We turned again super fast to find out that the lady was gone. We turned ourselves again and to see that the guy in the rocking chair was also gone too. We ran as fast as we could. We never spoke of it since. We never really knew anything of what happened to us. This next story comes from Alyssa, located in Tasmania, Australia. When my mom was a young girl, aged around 12 to 13, her school went on a camp where there were stories of a lady called the Umbrella Lady, who was known for holding an umbrella in one hand and her head in another. All the girls shared a room and all the boys shared another. Late in the first night she was there, the girls were all up sharing scary stories. After that, they all eventually fell asleep. My mom then woke up from her sleep because she needed to go to the bathroom. The toilets were outside, very old and rattly and gross, so she went off to the toilet and she heard footsteps. She thought it might have been someone else going to the toilet, or maybe a teacher heard her get up and wanted to check if the students were up to no good. When she had finished in the toilet, she walked out and went to walk back to the room. But as she looked up, she saw someone in the distant corner. She walked closer and it appeared to be a lady with an umbrella in one hand and her head in the other. She had never ran so fast in her life. She tells me still to this day she can remember every detail of that night. This next story comes from Jules, located in New Jersey. On July 10th, 2014, I decided to drive to the Devil's Tree to take pictures. Even though the tree is 2.7 miles away from my house, I had the feeling that someone or something was watching me while I was taking pictures in my car. I left with no problems. A few weeks later, I was taking a shower in the morning. I shut my bathroom door while I showered. While I was showering, my bathroom door opened a little bit as if someone passed by. I thought my dog was in my room. I got out of the shower and realized my bedroom door was also shut and nobody was in my room. I was freaked out and did some research on the Devil's Tree. I found that spirits might follow you home. I truly believe that a spirit had followed me home from the Devil's Tree. This next story comes from Alyssa, I hope I said your name right, from Australia. So when I was 8 years old, I lost my father to suicide. A few months after the incident, I was sitting down on the couch and watching TV, minding my own business, until I heard the sound of someone exhaling loudly right in my ear. I looked around me, thinking that it may have been one of my brothers, but no one was near me. I'm not sure if it was my mind playing tricks on me, but I'm pretty sure it was my dad. Also, ever since I lost my father, I sometimes see a tall male shadow-like figure wandering around my bedroom at night. Most of the times when I see the male shadow-like figure, I break into tears and say, "I miss you, Dad," because I know the male shadow figure is my dad. This next story comes from Erica, and the location is the USA. Over the summer, my family and I moved into a house. We lived there for a few months and never had any paranormal experiences. One day, my 3 siblings and I were watching TV in the basement when we heard a crashing noise that sounded like dishes falling, and then footsteps going down the main hallway in our house. We stayed downstairs for a few minutes, too frightened to walk upstairs to check it out. When we decided to go upstairs, we heard running up and down the main hallway. My brother automatically assumed it was one of our parents, but after searching the entire house and calling both of them, we realized we were alone. At this point, my siblings and I were freaking out to the extent of holding things we could use as weapons and sitting closely on the couch upstairs. My little sister decided she was fed up and walked down the main hallway to her room. Not even a second had she been in her room that she came running down the main hallway saying she had heard something in our parents' room, which was the room right across from hers. Us, being the older siblings, automatically discredited her, but the moment we did, we heard the bathroom door in our parents' room slam shut and then scratching getting nearer and nearer to us, like someone was walking down the hallway with their nails against the wall. None of us felt like we could move, and later, after talking about it, realized we all felt paralyzed, but got the same feeling to run at the exact same time. We ran out of the house to the car. We drove to Target and stayed there until our mom called. When we walked outside, all the doors to our car were wide open to the fullest extent, but nothing was missing. My brother swears he locked the car doors before we went inside the building. Since then, we haven't had any other profound paranormal experiences together as a group, but we have had experiences individually. This next story comes from someone who would like to remain anonymous, but the location is India. When I was just 13 years old, my grandpa passed away. After some weeks, I came back to my home. My mom works in a bank, and my dad was working in a telephone department. And as I'm the only child to them, I was left alone in the home. For my safety, I locked the gates and the main door of the house. And one day, I was folding my clothes, and I just looked around the hall as usual, and I saw the chair near the window facing towards the north. And as I finished folding my clothes and was moving to my closet to keep those all inside it, my eyes went through casually in the hall, and I saw the chair was misplaced. At first, it was near the window facing towards the north, and the next time when I saw it, it was turned towards me to the east side. I actually didn't get that At the moment, I was confused and I was really scared. This next story comes from Taylor, located in New South Wales, Australia. About 4 years ago, I was on a school camp at Byrea Sport and Recreation, and at the time I had no idea that it was haunted. We stayed for 4 nights and a lot of weird things occurred. Every night at least one thing would happen, and I always felt uneasy in the rooms and walking alone around the camp. I never felt safe at night alone. After a full day of activities, we came back to our room, and it was locked all day, and all of our suitcases had been opened, and all of our stuff was everywhere. No one had been in our room since the morning, and we had it nice and tidy for the teachers to check. This spooked us. Our bathroom light blue may not have been anything paranormal, but every night I'd see a red blob of light at the end of my bed, and I was on the top bunk. I thought it was one of my friends playing a trick on me, but they were all asleep. I also saw a face in the window, and a few years later I did research on it and to find that the female dorms were actually haunted. This next story comes from Albert. One foggy night, I was standing next to Highway 73 in Redding, California. Dude, that's my hometown. This is weird. As the car approached, the lights lit up, about a dozen ghosts walking across the highway towards me. I got the impression that they were not conscious of me. They were wearing what looked like old farm hats and old clothing from at least the 19th or 20th century. This next story comes from Jaquay, located in Ohio. Sometime this past year, my dad was out somewhere while my mom, brother, and I were at home. So something came up and I had a question for my dad. I was up in my room cleaning it, and Mom was in her room. We were on the 2nd floor and my brother was downstairs. So I thought I heard my dad walk in downstairs and throw his keys on the counter. I went down to ask him a question I had for him. When I got down to the kitchen, he wasn't there. I asked my brother if he came home yet, and he said no. Then, within 5 to 10 minutes, I was back up in my room, and my brother was with my mom in her room now. At this time, I was sweeping my bedroom floor. So once again, I heard the same thing. My dad walked in and threw his keys on the counter. So I walked down to ask him my question. He wasn't there. I walked back upstairs and asked my mom and brother if they heard him walk in also, and they said yes. So they heard the same thing I did over me sweeping my room. Then I told them he wasn't home yet. When my dad finally came home a little over a half hour after that happened, I asked him if he came home at all between the times he had left and come back. His answer was no. Just thought that was a little weird. So that is it for now. Stay tuned for the next episode. If you would like to submit your ghost story or paranormal experience, please go down to the description below this video and follow the directions on how to submit your story. I love you guys. Thumbs this up if you liked it. Comment down below and let me know what you think of these stories, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!